Hello again. The Wuzuquan spear form is called Qímǎ Qiāng, which means horse riding spear. Some people refer to this form as the Qímǎ spear, after the late Master Qi. However, while a form can be named after the master who created it, Master Qi did not create this form, as confirmed to me by Master Han. So, let's take a look at the key points of the Wǔzúquán Qímǎ Qiāng. First, notice how short it is. Infantry spears, on the other hand, were typically much longer, which suited close-order phalanx tactics. But such long spears would have been unwieldy on horseback. So the cavalry spear was often much shorter for ease of handling while riding a horse and, of course, for individual combat while dismounted. Although I imagine cavalry spears of 3 meters or more also existed in China, as they did in Europe for close-order cavalry charges. I don't know of anyone who still practices traditional Chinese spear techniques on horseback. However, from the waist up, many of the techniques taught in the form can be used while mounted. For the Wǔzúquán spear form, the total length of the weapon should be about the distance between the floor and the tips of your fingers when your arm is extended above your head. However, in drilling some key movements, you can use a much longer shaft, which will be heavier and will give your core a better workout. But in practicing the form, the spear should be the correct length for you. Otherwise, the spearhead will smash into the ground at some points during the form. The business end is called the head, and the other end is called the tail, although some call it the butt. Chinese spear shafts these days are typically white waxwood, but that's mainly because of the popularity of modern wushu, where waxwood is the competition standard. China is a big place, and I imagine throughout its long history, spear shafts have been made of a variety of woods. Regardless, I like waxwood because it's both firm and springy, which is how our movements should be in Wǔzúquán. Most spears that are available in martial arts stores have cheap, light heads like this one. However, I've replaced mine with steel heads. This fairly standard diamond-shaped head, and this one that is more dagger-like. Both are heavier than the cheap head, and this affects how you wield the weapon. With both types, damage is mainly caused by thrusting with the point, but either one can also deal damage by striking downwards or sideways with the edge. As for the tassel, most store-bought spears come with a nylon tassel, which doesn't have enough weight to properly swish when we wield the spear. I've replaced mine with traditional horsehair tassels, which do have enough weight to swish well, as you'll see shortly. This one was bleached and then dyed red, as is traditional, whereas this one is untreated. I've heard it said that the purpose of the tassel is to distract the opponent, but I'm not convinced. The spear was a battlefield weapon after all. I doubt amid the chaos of battle any experienced soldier would have been mesmerized by a swishing tassel. Two other explanations make more sense to me. One, the tassel swishes when we perform certain moves correctly. Thus, it acts as an indicator of correct technique during training. 2. The tassels serve to absorb the opponent's blood, most of which could then be quickly removed with a flick or two using the aforementioned swishing action. This would prevent blood from running down the spear shaft, which could otherwise make it slippery and difficult to hold. I bought these spearheads and tassels while on a trip to China some years ago, but I don't know where you might get them outside China. We are not ancient Chinese warriors, so we're never going to have to apply weapons techniques for real. However, training with long weapons helps us refine our unarmed technique. Because the weight of the weapon changes our center of gravity, correct practice forces us to improve our stance and posture. However, incorrect practice can worsen our stance and posture, so we have to get it right. The details matter, and precision is key to Wuzuquan. Wielding a long weapon effectively also requires core strength, so practicing regularly with long weapons gives the core a workout. I particularly like the spear for this because its flexibility and whipping action mean we must generate power from the core and express it in the weapon through relaxed limbs. We must train for correct, smooth, and precise technique. Speed is not so important, which is also true for our hand forms, as I explained in a previous video. The only reasons to train for speed would be to prepare for battle or a modern wushu performance, neither of which is our case. Of course, the most important reason to practice with the spear is that you enjoy it. We grip the spear firmly enough to maintain control, but we must be ready to slide the spear through either hand as needed. In the guard position, students often make the mistake of gripping a long weapon near its tail instead of at its tail. This effectively shortens the weapon. The spear can be used effectively at close range by shortening the grip. However, typically, in the guard position, our grip should be at the tail and the rear hand should be at the hip. The lead hand should be extended in front, but not hyperextended. With the spearhead pointing at our opponent. It is not a guard position if our opponent does not feel threatened by the point of the spear. Our back stance, san jian ma bu, should be square, with both hips equidistant from the opponent. When we hold the spear in the basic guard position, we must make sure not to lose this squareness. However, junior students usually skew this stance to one side as soon as they take a weapon in hand. This is particularly true in the case of long weapons, but it also happens when students wield short weapons. I covered this in more detail in a previous video. This mistake signals that the student is not using their core strength to counter the weight of the weapon, or that they are not yet comfortable and rooted in their back stance. Make no mistake, if you lose the squareness of your stance and posture, you are no longer doing Wuzuquan. Maintain an upright posture. We must not let the weight of the weapon drag our chin forward, nor cause us to hunch over. Junior students sometimes move the head when the weapon comes close, instead of moving the weapon around the head. This can be a consequence of stiffness in the shoulders, making it difficult to lift the weapon, but it can also reflect a lack of comfort with, or even fear of, the weapon itself. Our gaits are the lines of attack that can threaten us. In other words, the angles that we must defend. As you can see, the basic guard position allows us to defend all frontal gaits. Let's take a look now at a key combination in spear handling. Lan, na, ja. There are two ways to execute lan. One, to protect the head with the tail of the spear, which I call upper lan. Two, to protect the leg with the head of the spear, which I call lower lan. Whenever we execute a protective or intercepting movement in Wuzuquan, whether with or without a weapon, we go no further than we have to. We defend the gate, not the area outside the gate. With upper lan, we use the tail of the spear to intercept an attack to the side of the head. Junior students often execute this block badly, some exaggerating the movement so much that the weapon ends up on the opposite side of the head, sometimes even resting on the neck. This demonstrates a poor understanding of the purpose of the block, which is to protect the face and head from a strike from the front or from the same side as the rear hand. There are less clumsy ways to protect the head on the opposite side. Moreover, junior students often merely swing the weapon into position, generating limited power from the shoulders and arms, instead of maximum power from the core. Whether armed or unarmed, in Wuzuquan, the core should generate the power, while the limbs serve mostly to direct that power. With lower lan, we use the head of the spear to intercept an attack to the leg. Again, junior students often swing the spearhead into position instead of whipping it using the core. In modern wushu, you will see lan being executed at waist height, protecting neither the head nor the leg. My impression is that this is a modified version of lan to facilitate speed of performance, since the head of the spear describes a much smaller arc, which is quicker to execute. At a more senior level, the grip changes when we execute lan. This grip comes from the monkey system. When we block a weapon, a skilled opponent might be able to adjust his stroke to attack our fingers. This grip minimizes the vulnerability of our fingers. You might think that this unusual position reduces our grip on the weapon, and that may be true, but it also reduces the risk of losing some fingers in combat. However, with regular practice, we can develop quite a strong grip in this position. Remember that Wuzuquan is a martial art, not a combat sport. Every detail comes from some previous master's battle experience. I imagine this detail came from a master who lost some fingers in combat. The pressing action that immediately follows lan is meant to suppress our opponent's weapon and or attack their lead hand. Again, junior students often drive the movement solely with the arms without harnessing the power of the core. Once we have suppressed the opponent's weapon or injured their lead hand, they are now open to a counter thrust. Many who practice weapons do so without thinking about or understanding the true nature and purpose of the movements. To practice a weapon form without this understanding is to reduce it to something akin to baton twirling. The intent of ja is to thrust the spearhead into another human being's body and twist it. Understanding this does not imply a desire to do such a horrific thing. But not understanding it means the practitioner cannot perform the movement correctly, nor can they claim to be practicing martial arts. When executing a thrusting strike with the spearhead, ja students often merely poke instead of thrusting decisively. In application, this would mean the weapon would not fully pierce the target, and it reflects a poor understanding of the true nature and purpose of the weapon. After the thrust, the weapon must be drawn back swiftly and with a downward pop. Jia is not complete without this movement. This drawing back has a distasteful purpose, but students should be aware of it in order to perform it correctly. There are 3 applications. 1. To withdraw the spearhead suddenly from the opponent's body while twisting, thus causing further tissue damage on the way out. 2. To shake blood and tissue off the spearhead and tassel. 3. To suppress any counterattack should the thrust be unsuccessful. Inexperienced students passively draw the weapon back, making the movement ineffective for any of its 3 applications. Once again, I emphasize that being aware of the application of such movements does not equate to a desire to do harm to another human being. However, refusing to acknowledge the purpose of these movements while claiming expertise in the weapon is naive at best and perhaps even disingenuous. In part 2, I'll demonstrate the Qímǎ Qiāng form and address some key points. Thanks for watching.